Bijan, Gibbs, and Barkley all in the chase with CMC to be running back one. The door is open for Singletary, and White's time is now. We're talking running back values, people. So stand by for this week's top 5 fantasy headlines. Headline number 1, Bijan aiming for 2K on the ground. If we're to believe new Falcons head coach Raheem Morris, fantasy managers are going to be thrilled with Bijan Robinson's 2024 workload. Asked this week about Robinson's role, Morris said, get the ball to Bijan as much as you can in as many ideal situations as you can. Morris's comments hit harder because we already heard the same from Robinson and incoming offensive coordinator Zach Robinson. Both the Robinsons have mentioned Christian McCaffrey-like usage, and Bijan is targeting 2,000 rushing yards this season. In case you missed it, the rookie finished with 976 yards rushing and 487 yards receiving last season with 8 total touchdowns, despite usage that fell short of expectations. He finished as running back 8 in fantasy, scoring an average of 14.8 points per game. Meanwhile, nobody in the NFL posted a better per-game fantasy scoring average from weeks 1 through 17 than McCaffrey's 24.7. Rams running back Kyren Williams at 21.4, he came closest. That's important and pertinent. I discussed it in last week's video. Catch a replay on the Football Guys Audible channel if you missed it, and the link is below. McCaffrey, who finished with the most opportunities of any running back in the league, averaged 22.1 chances per game last year. Similar usage in 2022 allowed him to average 22 points per game as a Niner, including 5 games with at least 25 points. But assuming Zach Robinson runs a scheme similar to what he worked with for 5 seasons under Sean McVay in Los Angeles, we can draw a more direct line here to Williams, who averaged 21.6 touches per game in his breakout season last year. Williams finished 3rd in rushing despite missing 5 games due to an ankle injury. He still finished the season as running back 7. The importance of volume became even more apparent when Williams went on a league-winning tear upon return from that injury. From weeks 12 through 17, Williams' touches increased to 25 a game. He was fantasy's running back 2 over that span. If we want Bijan hitting his current running back 3 spot in the Football Guys 2024 draft rankings or his running back 2 status on Underdog, where he's going with the 6th pick overall, he'll need volume. And if he gets it, running back 1 and even overall number 1 production are well within his range of possible outcomes. Headline number 2, the Lions have plans for Gibbs, and you're going to like them. The Lions expect running back Jahmyr Gibbs to handle a more robust role in his 2nd season, but that doesn't necessarily mean an increase in carries. But don't panic, kids. Last season, veteran running back David Montgomery had 30 more carries than Gibbs and led the Lions with 1,015 rushing yards, playing 1 fewer game than his younger teammate. Nonetheless, Gibbs made his mark on the NFL as a rookie, rushing for 945 yards and 10 touchdowns with 52 receptions for 316 yards and another score. He was 2nd in rushing yards and tops among all first-year players in touchdowns. His 1,261 scrimmage yards ranked 3rd among all rookies. So how do we get more out of Gibbs this year? Well, the Lions intend to lean into his receiving skills to get him the ball in space. Wide receiver Amon-Ra St. Brown with 164 and tight end Sam Laporta with 120 got most of the targets in the passing game last season. Gibbs got the 3rd most with 71, an average of 4.7 per game. Josh Reynolds' departure in free agency should open up some targets. Jameson Williams could help fill that void, but Gibbs' potential to be a much more significant part of the passing game, not just as a check down or short option route receiver, but down the field, could be huge for him and Detroit's passing game. Gibbs is a terrific open field runner. He was 2nd among all NFL running backs with 10 rushes of 20-plus yards last year. Increasing his targets even slightly would make a difference. Breece Hall led all NFL running backs with 90 targets, 5.2 per game last year. So it wouldn't take a huge bump for Gibbs to move closer to the top of that list with players like Hall, McCaffrey, Robinson, and Alvin Kamara, who had 86 targets. Gibbs is running back 4 on the Football Guys 2024 draft rankings, which aligns with his current Underdog ADP. Worried about Montgomery? Well, Gibbs' running back 10 finish last season came with the former Bear finishing running back 17. There's room for both to succeed here. If this is the kind of content you're looking for, you'll love the Football Guys Daily Update. The biggest stories in football, summarized, explained, and delivered straight to your inbox every day. Sign up and check it out. It's totally free, and you can unsubscribe at any time. You'll find a link in the description below this video. While you're there, do the YouTube stuff, like it, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and comment because your feedback matters. Headline number 3, Barkley's landing spot is fantasy gold. The Eagles paid up to land former Giant Saquon Barkley, signing the veteran running back to a 3-year, $37 million contract in free agency. That's real money in a league where only 6 running backs make over $10 million annually, including Barkley at $13 million. What prompted Philly to buck the trend of devaluing the position? Well, it turns out the devaluation was the very reason. Has the pendulum swung so far at the position, Eagles GM Howie Roseman recently asked? I mean, this guy touches the ball 300 times a year, hopefully, and that's precisely what we as fantasy managers want to hear. Barkley rushed for over 5,200 yards in 6 seasons with the Giants. He added 288 catches for 2,100 yards. He did so under less than ideal conditions, which was also a consideration. The Eagles realized what we should all take into account heading into this season. It's not just that Philadelphia has arguably more offensive talent than any team in the NFL. No, it's more than that. For the previous 6 seasons, Barkley was surrounded by one of the league's least talented offensive teams. For example, Eagles wideouts A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith topped 1,000 receiving yards apiece in each of their 2 seasons together. In New York, Barkley only played with one receiver who even approached those numbers, Odell Beckham, who had 1,052 receiving yards when Barkley was a rookie. Not coincidentally, that was Barkley's best receiving years. He had 91 catches for 721 yards. Jalen Hurts, an MVP candidate in 2022 versus Daniel Jones. Well, that's not close. But the offensive lines offer the starkest comparison between what Barkley has now versus what he had then. The Eagles' offensive line has consistently been one of the NFL's best, while the Giants' line has consistently been one of the NFL's worst. It's hard to tell the story of how wide the gap is with numbers, but this one does a decent job. Barkley, on average, ran just 1 yard before getting hit last season, according to Pro Football Focus. DeAndre Swift, the Eagles' primary back last year, averaged 2.1 yards before contact. With an extra yard before first contact, Barkley, who ran for 962 yards in 14 games, would have run for at least 271 more. Barkley is our running back 5. Given the supporting cast and anticipated workload, he's absolutely in the running for that running back 1 finish. Headline number 4, what can volume do for Singletary? The Giants signed Devin Singletary, who worked under current head coach Brian Daboll in Buffalo, to replace Barkley. As ProFootballTalk.com's Michael David Smith suggested, some may see that as a step backward at the position. Singletary does not. In fact, Singletary thinks he brings the same things to the Giants that Barkley did. I feel like I'm a playmaker like him, Singletary told the New York Post. Well, Singletary can make a good case for himself statistically. Over the 5 years both of them have been in the league, Singletary has more rushing yards and a higher yards per carry average than Barkley. In addition, Singletary, who has 20 rushing touchdowns in 78 career games, also pulled in 175 passes for 1,164 career receiving yards and another 4 touchdowns. Although Barkley produces more highlight reel runs, Singletary has been healthier and more consistent, and he's delivered when given the opportunity. Last year, Singletary was expected to serve as backup to Dameon Pierce in Houston, but Pierce struggled in a 3-game absence due to an ankle injury. Well, it opened the door for Singletary. As the Texans starter from weeks 9 through 18, Singletary rushed for 715 yards, which ranked 3rd in the NFL. Now he takes over a Giants backfield with a tremendous need. Last season, Barkley averaged 17.6 carries and nearly 3 catches a game over the 14 contests he was on the field. Again, Barkley worked behind an offensive line that ranked 26 as a run blocking unit in Football Guys Matt Bitonti's 2023 offensive line rankings. Given all the challenges, can Singletary fill the Barkley-sized hole in this offense? The good news is I don't need him to do that. Singletary is running back 31 in our rankings, which is in line with his running back 32 ADP on Underdog. Even with reports this week that rookie Tyrone Tracy Jr. is pushing for a receiving role, grabbing Singletary as a running back 3 gives you a depth player with a solid role, and maybe some upside if last year's production was more indicative of his abilities than we realized in round 9. That seems like an easy call. Headline number 5, White ready to cash in on Pierce's magic number? At the end of last season, Raiders running back Zamir White got his opportunity to start with Josh Jacobs sidelined by an injury. Remember, Jacobs led the league in rushing in 2022, accounting for nearly 80% of the team's carries. He was on pace for a similar percentage last season before sustaining the quad injury that cleared the way for White to show off his abilities. White responded by averaging 114.3 yards from scrimmage per game over the team's last 4 contests. He ran for 397 yards with 4.7 yards per carry, highlighted by a 145-yard performance in a Christmas Day win over Kansas City. White, who also caught 9 passes for 60 yards, was running back 9 during that stretch. But the volume, 24.3 opportunities per game, that's the most encouraging aspect of White's rise. Those totals were no accident. They're what head coach Antonio Pierce wants. As the Coach Speak Index points out, Pierce's self-proclaimed magic number is 20-plus touches per game for his backs. Still on his rookie contract, there's no reason to expect White's workload to decrease. He currently sits at running back 28 on the Football Guys 2024 draft rankings, which is just a little off his running back 23 average draft position on Underdog. If you're like me and you're chasing volume, White is a bargain in round 8. By the way, Football Guys Sigmund Bloom and Cecil Lammey went in on Robinson and Barkley while discussing the 6 players that can break fantasy football on this very channel earlier this week. And our own Alfredo Brown and Dave Kluge, they share their thoughts on Singletary and White on the 8 players with massive opportunities video on the Football Guys Fantasy Football channel. See links to both videos below. That's it for me, Bob Harris. I'll be back here next Friday with more of the fantasy news that matters most to you, and also watch for my fantasy notebook every Monday morning at footballguys.com.